Welcome to this Saturday session of Paint a Beautiful Picture. Today we will be talking about how you deal with a sick child, emotional trauma in childhood, and the way that that continues to affect you throughout your lifetime. Holidays and families. Oh my gracious. This is such a really fun topic, but oh my goodness, if you've ever had a rough holiday with a big family, you can appreciate why we're going to have this discussion. And then making memories with your child and with your family. And so let's get started. Oftentimes, children have their own style of handling things. If their personality is vastly different than yours, it might really surprise you the way that kids find to cope with things. So I have one son, and when he was sick or when he was hurting, he was pretty nonchalant, and I don't think that he has such a strong perception of pain. He's pretty good at handling pain. Broken bones, stitches, all kinds of things sailed through him. Then he had his tonsils out. Oh my word. And he screamed and he screamed and he screamed. He did not scream for hours, he screamed for days. I still couldn't even tell you what that was about. I suspect it was that the doctor told both my son and me that it doesn't really hurt. And I think it hurt a lot more than he was expecting. So I think not only was it the pain, but it was the fear and the disillusionment of an adult lying to him about this. So he just screamed. And he ended up having a couple extra surgeries because he would just break it all open and bleed like crazy. And they had to go back in there and cauterize some more. It was really traumatic. And frankly, I was really shocked. My other son had a couple of major surgeries before his second birthday. He was a preemie, so he had some issues, often premature babies do. And he handled surgery radically differently than his brother in that he was kind of stoic and calm. But when he got sick, he was more of a crybaby just on a regular basis of being sick or when he got hurt. I don't mean a crybaby like a whiner. I mean just he would cry and be far more expressive about that when it happened to him. If you have a child who is sick, there are lots of emotional things involved for us as a parent. You know, we sometimes will experience guilt. We felt as though we should have kept them out of the room when another kid had the measles, even if we didn't know about it, or we should have kept them away from someone who had the flu. We just thought they had a runny nose. There is definitely a measure of guilt sometimes with a child who's sick. There is certainly a pretty good measure of guilt sometimes with a child who gets hurt. Oh, I shouldn't have ever let him do that. I don't know why I ever bought her a skateboard. I shouldn't have let her ride that bike. I should have told her to wear that helmet every single time, not just let her go down the driveway one time without a helmet. And don't you know, it's the one time she's going to fall and get this big gash in her head and need to go get stitches. There just is a lot of guilt with us sometimes when our child is sick or when our child is hurt. I would like to reassure you right here and now, not just as a mom, not just as a grandmother, but most especially as a maternal child nurse. Kids get hurt and kids get sick, and you are not God, and you should quit trying to play God. You don't have control over this. You really don't. I mean, let's face it, a kid can walk across the living room and fall down and slam his head up against the coffee table and end up with stitches. I mean, you can't put padding on everything that you own, and you can't lock your kid in his room. They're going to get hurt. Okay? I want you to get that down in your mind. Your child is going to get sick. Your child is going to get hurt. This is the world in which we live. Get rid of guilt as much as possible. Now, if you do something extraordinarily foolish and it really does happen because of you, you might appropriately have to process that. But I'm telling you, in general, get rid of the guilt. With that being said, you do have to deal with the pain and the anguish of watching your child sick and hurt. And it's a bummer. And if you have a sensitive heart and you have a close relationship with your child, it is tough. I can really say that to you. You know, when my one son had his tonsils out, that was horrific for me. I sat there with him, and I'm not a crier, you know. I just cried. It was horrible watching him in that kind of pain. When my other son would get sick and he was miserable, I hated it. It was just absolutely awful. I hated it for him. So what do? 1, deal with your own stuff, as you heard me say. If you feel guilty, alleviate it. Do what you have to do. Tell it to your best friend. Say, God, I messed up here, okay? Please forgive me. And then move on. Don't wallow in that guilt because you don't have time for that. This is about your child. You have to get a hold of him or her. And if they're in a position for it, because sometimes you can't hold on to them. One time my son was in an oxygen tent, and I'd go in there with him and hold him, and they'd say, "You're not supposed to be in here." Well, that was really hard for me not to. But anyway, I tried hard to follow that rule, but sometimes I admit I still got in there and held on to him. Anyways, as much as you were able, hold that child, comfort that child. Just get it in your head. I'm not going to get regular stuff done today. It's not going to happen. Reassure your child verbally, even if they're in pain. You can't say, "Oh, I'm going to take it all away, baby. I'm going to make it better." You may not be able to do that. Don't give them false reassurances. But you can say to them, "I'm so sorry this hurts. I feel so badly that you're in pain. I really, really mean it. It's really awful when you're sick. I'm so sad about that." You can tell them the truth about how you feel. Then they know it's okay to feel sad too, because probably they do. Not only does their physical body feel junky, they don't get to go play, they don't get to go to school. Their whole life is torn out of frame by being sick or really hurt. Let me tell you, a child who is either chronically sick or seriously sick, I will use the cancer word, even though most people are petrified because definitely children get cancer, and a lot of other terrible things, which I won't go into and scare you. But let's just say that your child has a chronic or a long-term illness. I mean, you can't sit around and hold them forever, and you have to get them to live to the extent that they are able to live. And so that's a little bit different, and I will get to that in just a minute. But let me say, so you have this child and he's sick, has the flu, has COVID, has bronchitis, whatever. You take those couple of days and you really nurture and cherish and comfort that child. It depends on what goes on in your house. You might let them watch a couple of videos that they wouldn't normally get to see. I don't mean bad ones. I mean, ones that are 2.5 hours long, and they often don't have that kind of time available to them. So they can when they're sick. Or you let them do things like read, or you read to them, or you let them do a quiet activity like color. Sometimes when my kids were sick, I didn't like markers on a regular basis because that's just trouble waiting to happen. But they're in bed in a confined space. I would let them have markers. And so it was kind of like, I can't say a reward, but a special thing in acknowledgement that when you're sick, you deserve extra special care. That little bit of TLC, tender loving care. And so you really take care of them and minister to them in an appropriate way, physically and emotionally, even psychologically, that they know you're there. I'll tell you this, when I was a kid, my mom decided to get a job. And so one day I was really sick. I was really thinking my mom was going to stay home with me. I was hardly ever sick as a kid. In fact, I think it's the only day in my childhood that I remember that I was home from school. I had a really high fever. I could not go to school. And my mom left me home. And when you have all these brothers and sisters and all these people and all this craziness, and suddenly you're the only person in the house, that was really scary to me. My next door neighbor lady, I don't know if my mom asked her to do this, but she came over and she hand fed me Campbell's chicken noodle soup. And because we were kind of poor, we didn't have things like that, things out of a can. We always had everything homemade, which was awesome. But I'm just saying, Mrs. Isaacs came over and she hand fed me chicken noodle soup. It's one of the most brilliant memories of my childhood that neighbor lady came over and took care of me that day. And so when you tenderly care for your child when they are sick, makes a big impact. If you have a child with a chronic illness or an acute illness, that's very severe, they have to learn how to live with life. If they don't have a fever, if they can still go places without being contagious, that's what they have to do. So you have to teach them how to cope with an illness or how to cope with a physical, emotional challenge and still live their life. They have to learn how to do that. And how they do that is you need to deal with it in a matter-of-fact way. You don't be all, oh, they don't need you falling apart. You need to have it together so they can have it together as well. And you need to tell them, I understand this is scary. This is uncomfortable. There are treatments or certain kinds of procedures you're going to have to go through in light of this, but this is manageable. I'm going to be here through this. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to hold your hand and take care of you, and we are going to make it through this thing together. So you're giving them a ton of support. You're letting them know what's going to happen, but you also tell them you have to go to school. You have to do things to the best of your ability. I had a young man in one of my classes. He had a lot of trouble, and yet he came to school every single day, and he persevered. And he was a really bright boy. He didn't have a super long life expectancy. Like he said point blank, I may not live past 25. He had known that since he was very young. And he said to me, but I'm going to live all the days I've got. Well, that kid had such a great attitude. And that's the way you have to deal with a chronic illness with a child. I know that this might not go well. I understand that. I'm praying every day that it will. I'm doing everything I can to get you all the care I can get you, and the doctors are doing everything they can. And who knows when they might discover a cure for this? It could be tomorrow. And we're doing the very best that we can. But listen, every single day of your life, I'm going to be here with you, and I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to tell you something very sad, but very true. Sometimes chronic illness or an illness that is likely to become fatal will divide families. One of the parents really just can't handle it and they take off. I'm sorry to say that to you. I wish I didn't have to, but it is true. It is difficult because people don't approach things the same on a daily basis, much less something with great severity, like an extraordinarily sick child or a long-term handicapped child. And so it is challenging to come together and to support one another. And when you're having your own hardship and your own processing of your emotions, and they're having theirs, and you're not doing it in the same way or at the same time or with the same depth or severity, it can be really tough to come together. And so, one of the best things you can do with a sick child, especially a child who's going to be sick long term, is to strongly work on your parents, your co parent relationship, on your marriage, on your really intimate process with your spouse or your mate, because the more stable the environment is, the healthier that is for your child in every possible way. And the more chaos there is, the less likely your child is going to handle it well. And so that's an odd thing to tell you about, but one of the things you can do to help your sick child is work on the bonds of relationship with your co-parent, because it matters. All of us know it is not expected that a child would die, but sometimes they do. When I was a little girl, I was 5 or 6 years old, I had a really good friend. His name was Ronnie, and he ended up dying of leukemia. But in about the last 6 months that he lived, my mom and his mother were good friends, and we were there a lot. And I can remember just getting up into his bed with him, because he got really weak at the end, and reading to him and coloring with him and just like snuggling up close and talking to him. He was really, really a good kid. I loved that kid, and we were very good friends. I think I did okay with it because we talked so much about what it would be like to go to heaven, and he really wasn't actually all that scared. I want you to know that though it is scary for us or it's challenging for us, it doesn't necessarily have to be really horrible for your child if you keep reassuring them about the fact that no matter what, you will always hold them in your heart. You will always love them. You will be with them until the very end, whenever that end might be, whether that happens when they're 4 or 5 or whether that happens when you're no longer here on the planet. Loss is a part of life. And so, helping your child for a day while she is sick or helping her longer term while she is sick shows your emotional commitment and allows them to work through what's going on with them and to end up with it not being a horrible experience. In fact, it can even have elements of being an okay or even a good experience. So I hope that helps you some if you're dealing with a sick child for the moment, or even if you're dealing with a sick child longer term. The last thing I'm going to say to you is this. Sometimes moms and dads don't know what to do. And when I was young, I was not a nurse. There were a lot of things I did not know. Never be afraid to call the doctor, go to urgent care, even go to the emergency room. If your child is sick enough to make you scared, go ahead, go get somebody to help you out. That's what we health professionals are here for. Speaking of Ronnie, my friend who died when I was a child, kids go through emotional trauma. Sometimes mom or dad ends up leaving, and a child feels really deeply abandoned. Sometimes they lose a friend in a car accident or through a childhood illness, even. It doesn't happen as much in today's world, but trust me, in Africa, in the Philippines, in certain parts of the world, kids die every day, and other little kids have to deal with that in some way or another. There's no question that children go through emotional trauma. I would say that when my son had his tonsils out and he went through that really rough patch, he had emotional trauma to the extent that when his own son needed to have a tonsillectomy, he fought that tonsillectomy for over a year. He didn't remember in his conscious mind everything about it, but that emotional trauma affected his decisions as an adult in relationship to his own son. We can have an emotional trauma when we see something horrible, like a bad car accident. It's part of why I have issues with little kids watching the news. It's kind of sensationalism, and they want to show you the worst, scary, terrible, horrible, bad things. And little children, they don't need to hear it, and they certainly don't need to see it. You don't need to put emotional trauma into a kid's life. Wow. It's another reason why I say whenever you're watching movies and you're an adult, you can watch an R-rated movie so you can see stuff that's not freaking you out. Oh, that's going to do things to your 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old. So they don't have any business being in the room. You don't need to say, oh, they're asleep. All they got to do is wake up for 15 seconds at the wrong time and they're traumatized. Don't do that to your child. That's unnecessary. There's enough stuff in the world that's really going to cause trauma. You don't need to do it. And so, what do you do about trauma? Not every kid in the world is going to get traumatized, but I'll tell you, some kids, for reasons I cannot even explain to you medically, have horribly traumatic nightmares. They're called night terrors. I don't even know where it came from. Honestly, when I was a kid, we didn't have a television set. I'm talking a little kid, 3 and 4 years old, but I had horrific nightmares, like screaming, sweating, oh my lands. And so some kids definitely have those. What in the world, as a parent, are you supposed to do about trauma in a kid? Well, it's a really good question. Let's approach that a little bit. Number one, if trauma happens, even if it's not what you would perceive of as trauma, I can guarantee you that most of us understand your grandfather dies and you always went fishing with him and hung out with him and stayed at his house, and you're 7 years old and he dies. Anyone can see that as trauma. If you're 11 years old and your mom got killed in a head-on car crash, we can all know that that is trauma. We might not understand that they saw something, they can't even necessarily explain it all or what exactly they saw, especially if they're 3 to 5 years old. In that range, they might not even have the language with which to express everything about what they saw or how it impacted them. But you really start noticing some kids will withdraw. That's often a severe trauma reaction. They just pull in like a turtle. They're just hanging on to everything they got inside because they don't know how to let it out, and it scared them so much and they really can't handle it. Other kids externalize it all. They're going to talk like crazy. They're going to keep on talking about it. Sometimes they're going to scream. Sometimes they're going to cry. It's all going to pour out of them. And, there can be a mixed reaction. Some days they're withdrawn, other days they're all out of whack. And you'll see some kids, when they externalize things, they'll break things. You'll see the anger and the frustration in them come out in some destructive ways. Usually not self-destructive for a little kid, but occasionally in a preteen or a teen, even in a self-destructive way. They're just trying to do something with it all. What can you do as a parent? Give them every bit of support that you can. Do not look at them and say, well, that's ridiculous. You should be over this by now. I don't know why you're having such a strong reaction. That doesn't matter. Everyone does not react just the same. I haven't seen many kids scream for 5 days after a tonsillectomy, but I did see my own son do it. And so you know what? It doesn't matter about what everyone else does. It matters about what your child is experiencing. So don't get on their case. Show them great support. I can tell this is really hard for you. You are really having a tough time with this. Acknowledge what's really happening with them. Don't give them a hard time or tell them to get over it. Do not do that. Support what they're going through. And say to them, especially if it was your own parent that got killed in that car accident too, or it was your own daddy that just died, you can say to them, I'm feeling sad too. And you can be sad together. That's really quite appropriate, okay? But if it's your spouse who left and you've got all your own anger issues and your own abandonment issues and you're hardly hanging on and you're not feeling like you've got a lot to give to your child, it doesn't mean that you cannot look at them and say, I cannot imagine how hard this is for you. Because you know what? Honestly, you can't. If you've been through the exact same thing, you cannot look at someone else and go, I know just exactly how you feel. Because no, you do not. You are not them. You are not your own child, and they're not you. You might have things in common, but that is an individual person, and you need to respectfully say to them, I cannot imagine what you are feeling. I'm certain it's not good, but I cannot imagine what you are feeling. But I would like to know. Anytime you feel like you want to talk to me, come and talk to me. And honestly, if you're going through your own pain and your own trauma, you need to be the adult. And you need to let your child talk it out. And I grant you, now you're going to have the weight of your own sadness and your own anger and frustration and the weight of your child's. So you probably are going to have to go get some counseling. And oh my gracious, if it's a very severe emotional trauma for your child, he or she very well may need to get some counseling. Let me say to you, often it's not right at the beginning. It takes a kid a little while to process some things. I'll tell you, I know someone at 46 years old, they finally went to process some of what had happened to them when they were about 9 years old. I know another lady, she was 64 when I finally was doing some counseling with her about things that happened to her as a teenager. We are not always ready to process things right when they happen, but let your child know that it's available. And don't be afraid to let your child know that you are going to counseling and you are dealing with some things and it's helping you to have someone to talk to, someone who's a professional, who has some understanding of things, who can direct you in certain ways or give you particular resources to cope. It's a good thing to let your child know there are things available. You can certainly take your child to someone like a pastor, or if they have a Sunday school teacher whom they really truly trust, and they can talk about the implications of what happened. Yes, you're right. Daddies should not abandon their families. That is really sad that your dad left. Your mom loves you. Your mom has a good job. Your mom is going to take good care of you. That kind of reassurance from someone other than your own parent is often really helpful to a child. And so I say to you, use your resources in dealing with emotional trauma, both for yourself and your child. And those resources might include a really good friend who is older and wiser, who can just listen, a pastor, but not all pastors are good at counseling. So if you go to someone and they don't really, it's not sounding right, don't keep going. I'm not being rude, but I will say it again and again. You don't have to keep going back to someone who's not really being helpful to you, okay? But a pastor who is wise and who is good at counseling is a great resource. There are often community help centers. If you don't have great insurance and you're struggling to find a counselor that is going to work for you, you can always go there. You can even do something as simple as try to find a social worker at your child's school and let them know what's going on in that child's life and see if they're available to do some in-house counseling right during school hours. There are lots of available things, and of course, there are lots of sources on the internet and at the public library that can help you deal with your child and your child's emotional needs. So I want to acknowledge to you that emotional trauma definitely can occur in childhood, and you are your child's greatest resource. You are their lifeline. You, as their mom or their dad, you are the one who makes life a firm foundation and gives them a level of security and emotional safety. And one of the most crucial times of doing that in a child's life is when they've been traumatized. Holidays are stressful. It's a fact. If you look at the listing of stresses, a death in the family, a divorce, a major move, financial difficulties, holidays, those are the top 5 stresses. Oh, there is a reason for that. We have all these expectations centered around holidays. It's just how we are as human beings. And across the globe in other nations, they definitely celebrate lots of holidays and certain events, and there are just massive celebrations about things. But there are not too many other nations on earth that are as well off as we are, or that make such a big deal, and certainly that spend the amount of money that we do here in the United States on major holidays. And holidays and the stresses of holidays affect families. We're going to end with Christmas because, of course, I have to tell you that is the most stressful holiday of all. So let's go to a couple other holidays. Easter, Halloween, 4th of July. Most people don't celebrate Labor Day or Memorial Day as a big, big thing, but some families do. We always had a massive family reunion on one side of our family at Memorial Day because it was near my grandmother's birthday. And my other side of the family had a big one at Labor Day. So actually, both of those were extraordinarily stressful in the household where I grew up. And so I can tell you that there are lots of holidays that you might not think of, but that can still be stressful. We'll go to the 4th of July. All right. You probably are doing some kind of food preparation, unless it's going to be at your house, and then you're even doing more food preparation. If you're going on a picnic or one where there are multiple people and you just have to bring something, still, you have to plan ahead and you have to prepare food. You're getting all these things going. If you're going to be gone away from the house, say you're going to go to somebody's house who has a pool, or you're going to go to the lake, especially if you're going to be gone for a few days, you have all of this stuff to prepare. Make sure you don't forget anything. You got all the chairs that you need, and you've got all the cooking utensils that you've got to have. Everybody in the entire house has to have adequate clothes, including a bathing suit. Nothing worse than going to a pool party and finding out that your mom forgot your bathing suit. Yeah, there's all this stress of preparation. I want to acknowledge to you that it's not always true, but in many households, much of this rests on the mom. It's ideal when you can work it out that weight of preparation is distributed between the mom and the dad. And certainly, if you've raised your children so that they're capable of getting their own clothes together or things like that, they can be of some help. Although, depending on the child, if they're kind of haphazard, you still want to look in that bag because, again, you don't want to get there and have somebody without a bathing suit. Anyways, you have all this preparation. You get everybody into the car or the van. You head off down the road. You're ready to go. And one of the kids is like, Mom, I have a stomachache and I really got to go to the bathroom and I got to go right now. I mean, there's always one more thing to add stress, or somebody spills their pop all over the back seat. Just, I mean, there's just a lot of stress, and the kids are up, and the adrenaline is up, and you can expect things to go on. And then you get there, and oh, so and so is in a bad mood, and this person you were really looking forward to, they didn't get to come because one of their kids has the flu. I mean, just there are always things, and so there's that level of stress. Then there's the person with whom you don't particularly get along, and the other one that your child doesn't really get along with. There are just stresses associated with holidays and families. If you admit that to yourself, first of all, you won't be nearly as disappointed, because we get these real rosy pictures of how it's going to go. And when it doesn't, we're so upset because it comes against what our view of how it was going to be or how it should be actually is. And that's a lot to cope with. Don't even put that on yourself. Tell your kids the same thing. We're going to have a really great time, but there are going to be some problems, and we're going to cope with those problems. It's just part of the story. When you get a bunch of people together, it's going to be all right. Oftentimes, when you go to someone's house, we're going to take Thanksgiving next, and you bring your favorite thing, and it's just gorgeous. I like apple sweet potato casserole with marshmallows on the top. And you put it on the table, and you have 5 or 6 people at the table go, "Oh, that looks so disgusting. I mean, why did you put marshmallows in there? What in the world did you put in here? Is that nutmeg?" And, the 2 people who can't stand each other for whatever reason, they end up right across the table from each other, or sakes alive, they sit down beside each other and they're arguing and bickering and fighting about politics. And you're like, wow, I thought I came here to have a wonderful time with my family. I mean, I thought that's what we were going to do today. And all this stuff is going on. That's what I said. You have to have a realistic expectation about the holidays. Everyone isn't always going to behave. People haven't seen one another in a long time, and they have unresolved issues. They're probably going to argue and fight and bicker and just be persnickety at each other all day. Hello, unless you're going to put them in entirely different rooms, that's going to come up. If you're a family who plays games like we are, there might be argument about which game you're going to play. Oh, I thought we played that last year. I don't really like that game. I don't want to play that game. The kids are supposed to play a game together, but they're throwing the pieces around, and just trust me. Holidays have a lot that go on that are not necessarily, pleasant or wonderful or part of your dream version of a holiday. And you have to deal with that. And you should deal with that in a healthy way. You should tell that to your kids. Then there's this problem. Life, everyone's life goes like this. There are things that go up. You anticipate the holiday. You're excited about the holiday. You're getting all these things gathered up for the holiday. The holiday comes, you're at the high. The next day or a few days later, you're going to start to go back down. Why do you think so many people are depressed in January? What do you know? No kidding. Life does this. Now, how high those hills are and how deep those valleys are, that's not exactly the same for every human person. But I'm telling you, there is an up and a down. I want you to know that, because half of the great joy of a holiday is the anticipation and the preparation. But after a holiday, be ready. There are going to be some down days. Not just about the things that went wrong. If you had a perfect holiday, that's still going to happen to you. Honest, it really is. Okay, now we're going to go to Christmas. We spend months planning for Christmas. Seriously, most of us do. Like, we'll buy Christmas ornaments for next year at the after sale on December 26th or 27th or 28th. We spend a lot of time and a lot of money preparing for Christmas. And we're buying gifts and wrapping them. And some people are doing that in July, and some people are doing that on December 24th. But nonetheless, we're spending emotional energy and money, and we're getting excited about what Christmas is like. Get excited about what Christmas is going to be like for the kids, and talk to them about what they want. And oh my gracious, there's a lot that goes into Christmas. And there is a certain amount of stress, but we generally perceive of that as positive stress in decorating the house, or if you have a Christmas open house with a buffet, there is a lot to prepare for. And we expend all this energy and we have expectations of how that's going to look. And then we get to the actual event. And the meatballs got burned, so we can't serve those. And somebody forgot all the gifts. And my son was so excited about what they were going to get from Grandpa, but somehow or another that one particular bag got left, and they're going to get them tomorrow, or they're going to get them in a couple days, but they're all upset right now and unhappy and screaming, crying, and all that drama. It just goes like that. The more people you throw into the mix, the more things that go wrong, the more stressors that come. And so you have to know, just get this somewhere in your emotional mindset, that holidays have stresses and things go wrong. And it's okay. I mean, oh my word. Every day things go wrong. Just we don't expect every day to be so amazing. We expect this day to be particularly incredible, and things go wrong. We're all freaked out about it. Don't do it. So I'm trying to prepare you ahead. Holidays are stressful. Oh my goodness me. If you can. And it took me a while. I'm telling you, I was not good at this when my sons were younger. As they got older, though, I got better and better at this. If you can, in the morning, so I do this on Thanksgiving, and I generally do this on Christmas, and when I am able, I would do it on Easter, have a nice breakfast. Just everyone can sit down. I mean, your own family. Have a nice breakfast, talk, relax. You didn't have to get up super early, unless you go to early service for church, but you just get to have a good time in the morning, so that everybody is kind of calm and relaxed and going to go into the day a little more mellow. Talk to them about what's going to happen and say, all right, we're going to go to Great Aunt Nancy's house today, and I'm going to be making this. I already prepared it, but I'm going to put it into the oven. We're planning on leaving here at 2 o'clock. Every single one of you needs to be clean and ready at 1:45. I want you sitting on that couch. You can't go outdoors. You can't play rough and rowdy, so you're going to tear your clothing. We're leaving this house at 2 o'clock. That means at 5 till you're in the van. No exceptions. I need to know that your shoes are sitting next to the door. You're telling all this to them in the morning. Yeah, they got lots of time to prepare, and they know just what's coming. That helps to reduce stress. You say to your spouse, or to the person who's going to be going with you, that's the adult, I'm going to be doing this. I would like you to. I need you to, because, we can get bossy when we're stressed. But I would like you to put this in the car, and this in the car, and this in the car. Oh man, we're not even leaving till 2. Yes, I know. I would like you to put all of these things in the car. It's not going to hurt them to be cold, and they're already going to be in there, and it will help reduce this mad rush. You're just doing what you can to reduce simple stress, so that when you get there and certain things happen, and someone dropped the pie, what are we going to do about dessert now? All those other stressors aren't so big on you, such a weight on you, because you started the day off well, and you didn't add to your own stress, and you did not add to your family stress. So once you've acknowledged that there is stress involved and it's a normal part of it, you eliminate some of it. Yeah, you're many steps ahead of the game. Okay? When the regular stresses come and somebody else wants to come unglued because they're not really prepared and they're not in the same place, you can then be the voice of calm. And you can look at them and say, I drop things all the time in the kitchen. It's a bummer that we don't have dessert, but look at all this. We have this gigantic spread. None of us are going to go hungry today. Don't worry about it. The other advantage of being prepared or anticipating that holidays can have their challenges is if you see two people who have not been getting along or who classically bicker, and you have 20 or 30 people there, you can literally say, oh, I was really looking forward to talking to whomever. Could I have this seat? Just like get in the middle of it. Don't let it happen. There are steps you can take that will help to cut down on the stress of holidays. Recognize every single person who walks in the door, they have their own set of expectations, their own ideas about how a holiday should look. Every single one of them would like all of their holiday dreams to come true and to be fulfilled. And when they're not, they are liable to experience some stress or some disappointment. If you are the person hosting the holiday, do your best, be as well prepared as you can, make it as stress free as possible, but acknowledge for yourself that holidays and families coming together are often a recipe for some stress and some disappointment. And don't take that all on yourself. Do as much as you can to reduce the stress and to enjoy the holiday. I really hope that was helpful for you. I don't know which parts of the holidays crack you up, but I'm going to tell you the one that really busts me up to the hilt. When I was a kid, we would always have a real Christmas tree. And because we didn't have a ton of money, Daddy would often get it on Christmas Eve. So he would go to a lot, 5 or 6 o'clock. It's already dark in Michigan, and all they have left are the end trees, the kind of scraggly whatever ones, but dirt cheap, because they want to make their last $5 and get out of there. You have to remember this is in the 60s. You really could get a Christmas tree for $5. Anyways, I remember this so well. Daddy'd be scrambling to get a tree, and he'd come home, and my mom would grouse, what were you thinking, Bill? Like, look at this thing. And Dad'd go, oh, just put it up against the wall, stick it in the corner. Nobody's going to see that part of it. Oh, man. And then my mom would put on the lights. Now, I have this in common with my mom. My mom was so picky. She'd start putting on the lights. Well, of course, she couldn't reach as tall as Daddy. So up at the top, Daddy would be putting on the lights, and she'd say, Bill, I can't believe it. What are you thinking? Can you see that? That's all wrong. Fix this. Oh, my mom was so picky about the lights. I just remember this. It would really crack us kids up as long as they didn't get in a big fight. But usually they did not fight on Christmas Eve or Christmas. I don't know. It was like this rule between them that they couldn't fight on Christmas Eve or Christmas. So as much as I know it was really getting to my dad, he'd just keep dealing. One year after I was married, we were putting up the Christmas tree. And actually, one year, most years, we had 8 or 9 Christmas trees because I really love Christmas. And my husband said, what is your deal with the lights? I said, what are you talking about? I don't have any deal with the lights. And he said, oh, man alive, baby, you are so crazy about the lights. And it really dawned on me like, oh, my word, I'm just like my mother about the lights. I can't tell you that I was thrilled about this picture because I was not, but it was pretty comical. I tell you that story because I don't know what parts of the holidays were kind of nutty for you, but we always joked about those Christmas lights, how Mama was with Daddy, and lo and behold, I grew up to be just crazy about those Christmas lights too. Here was our solution. We got a rotating Christmas tree stand, the kinds that just go around and around and around. So I got really smart. I would start at the bottom. I would turn on the Christmas tree stand. I would let it turn around, and I would just hold the lights and put the lights on while the tree went around and around. And the lights were perfectly distributed. I realize you can buy a pre-lit tree today and solve all that. But actually, it's a whole lot more fun to kind of hassle about the lights. One of the great things about holidays is making wonderful memories. You want to make memories for your kids. I have to tell you that of all the presents I ever got, I only know about 2, but I can tell you tons and tons of memories. So it is not the gifts that kids remember, but the memories. I want to say this to you. My kids remember Christmas because when they were little, much of the time we lived in Tennessee, and we would go to Michigan to Mom and Dad's, and it didn't snow that much in Michigan. Or pardon me, I misspoke. It didn't snow that much in Tennessee, but it snowed a lot in Michigan, and my boys liked snow. So they loved going up north and having snow and snowball fights and going sledding and a lot of those parts of it. In fact, they remember that more fondly than Christmas Day, truthfully. but they really loved to go north. So if you have a consistent holiday tradition when your kids are young, that's what they're going to remember. Not specific ones, but the broad overall picture of how fun it was to go to grandpa's house or how fun it was to go to a particular aunt's. Because when my sons were teenagers on, we would go to my one sister's home regularly for Thanksgiving. And my son, who's now 47 years old, consistently goes to that sister's house of mine, his aunt's house, for Thanksgiving, even if he has to invite himself. It's just such a part of his memory store. That's where he wants to be on Thanksgiving. When I was young, I did not understand the importance of tradition in my own home. I frequently took my sons to my sisters or to my mom and dad's. You know, there's always someone in the family who's willing to go wherever, and other people who are, it's at my house and I'm not leaving here and it's going to be my way. Well, I was the flexible one, so I'd go to my sisters, I'd go to my mom and dad's, I'd go to another one of my sisters. Because of that, I didn't feel like as I got older, we were staying home enough. And I had to literally almost force myself to start to make my own traditions at my own house with my children. And don't worry, I picked my holidays. I didn't do it on major ones and disrupt all the rest of the family motion, but it took some adjustment for me to grab back some things that I had just with my own sons. But here's the rest of the thing. People want to make big memories, so they'll take their kids on these extravagant vacations or go to Disney or go to on a cruise, all these things, and they think that's what their kid's going to remember. But I want to tell you something. What kids really remember is the day after day after day after day after day activities that were really fun to them. So, one of the things that my one son remembers the most is when they would go to bed at night and I would rub their backs and sing to them. That is so deeply embedded in his memory as one of the greatest parts of his childhood. So, though we think as adults sometimes those big, huge special events are what's going to stick in the memory of a child, often that's not the truth. It is the small, consistent memory making things that we do over and over again. I told you when my kids were small, we made dessert together every day. My one son to this day, there is hardly anything that'll get him going emotionally, like seeing me in the kitchen making dessert, making cookies, making pie, making cupcakes. When I do it with his sons, it really does something for him. So for him in his mind, that memory of cooking together, him standing on the chair and his brother standing on the stool, helping me measure out things and make things, that is such a memory for him. It's so deeply embedded in his mind. It's one of the joys of his life. And he still loves to see me when I'm in the kitchen making some kind of dessert. You just don't know what those memories are going to be. And so you have to have a level of consistency, certain things that you do very regularly. It's not the same in every family. Okay, so as I've said to you before, you can have a Friday movie night, just that everybody piled together on the couch and snuggle up under the covers, and you know, it's a couple hours where you can literally hold a child in your lap or have them right up against you and have that real strong physical closeness. You want to do something very, very, very consistently, whether that's every day or every few days, once a week, that when your child is older, they can look back at their childhood and say, man, when we this, that was so amazing. And it makes that memory pattern in their mind. And it gives them that sense of emotional warmth and closeness to you and to your family unit. That is part of establishing stability in your child's life, that consistent memory making process. I want you to know when we have memories that conflict, which I have because my mom and dad fought like crazy, but we had good days too. Oftentimes, depending on our temperament or our personality bent, you know, if we're pretty upbeat people and kind of optimistic, we're going to hang on to the good. But those kind of pessimistic, depressive, you know, those people, negative people, they're going to hang on to the bad. You want to do your absolute best to have more good in your child's memory stores than bad. In other words, you don't have to be perfect. You can fight with your spouse. You can have challenges. You can get stressed out and throw stuff and cuss and break stuff. You can be a human at your house. But try to do your best to make sure that those positive memory stores in your child's life are more prevalent than the negative ones. And that happens by consistently building positive, good, whole, just very healthy and strong memories in your child. You can't force it. You just have to let it happen. And that's why I said that about having something that is so consistent that establishes those memories. What's your great memory from childhood? What really sticks out for you? If you think about some of the absolutely golden moments of your childhood, what are they? Those are things that will give you a clue about what you would like to build into your own child's life. If you can't find a lot of golden moments, if you don't have just amazing, wonderful memories of people or events, places, things that you did over and over again with your mom and dad, that may tell you that your mom and dad did not understand this principle. And so I want you to get a hold of it. I think that for all of us, what we want to do is we want to remember fondly people and places and events. And so when you particularly choose and plan to put those things into your child's life, it really develops a richer, fuller life for them for the rest of their life. It also teaches them how to do that in the future. Just because no one taught us doesn't mean we can't learn as adults and pass that on to our kids. And so I want to encourage you a lot, and I do mean this, to make amazing memories with your children and with your mate, with your family, because sometimes when life is sad and life is difficult, even when we're having conflict within the family, those memories continue to hold us together and to give us good feelings about one another. I would really like to thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you felt like this episode was beneficial to you, please feel free to share it with someone. I would invite you to send me questions or comments. You may post them down below, or you may send them to me through paintabeautifulpicture.com. I hope that today is a day where you make wonderful memories with your family. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.